All right, good evening, everyone. We'll get started. This is the conditional use application of the Provco Pineville Phoenixville LLC with respect to a proposed Wawa store at the northeast corner of Valley Forge Road and Whitehorse Road. First hearing took place on July the 12th and was continued by notice given at the hearing to this evening. Just to introduce the players up front, to my left is Township Manager Lori Getz, and to her left are Martha Majeski, Mark Donovan, Susan Garrett, Danielle Joanne, and Bob Cooney is available, we hope, on the electronic hookup. Kara Fitzpatrick is our court reporter. Counsel this evening are Mike Crotty, representing Schuylkill Township, and Deborah Schuylkill representing the applicant. Now, having said that, there is one item of housekeeping that I need to clarify. Ms. Schuylkill, I presume you continue to agree that parties who are not here or were not here may read the record before any vote that's taken on your application. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. The second thing I understand is that even though the record was closed on behalf of the applicant at the end of the last proceeding, that there's some indication that you'd like to open the record and put some more evidence on. Would you explain what you wish to do? Is that?
Certainly. Hi, good evening again. Hi, good evening. Again, for the record, my name's Deborah Schuylkill. I'm the attorney representing the applicant. As Mr. Brennan indicated, as you know, we had rested our case at the last meeting. Since that time, we've had an opportunity, our consultants have had an opportunity to discuss certain issues raised by the township consultants, and we have made certain revisions to the plans to accommodate some of the township consultants' concerns. So we would like to respectfully request to open the hearing for the limited purpose. We just have 2 additional exhibits that I have pre-marked and will be distributing to have my witness or engineer testify to and explain for you.
All right. So it's a motion. Is there any objection?
No, no objection. I think we're in favor of it.
Any objection from any of the parties? I have a list somewhere who are actual parties to the proceeding. All right, seeing none, that's granted. You may proceed.
Okay, thank you. Let me just hand these out. Were, but I have a few extra.
If you're a party, please raise your hand.
Should we get added as a party?
We're not supposed to, so. Go ahead. We'll discuss that later on. We're in the middle of testimony. Okay, go ahead.
So the witness I would like to call is Jason Korzak. He was previously sworn in at our last hearing. Just try and share this. Yeah. Talk loud. Want me to talk loud? I'll
sure.
Let you have it.
Like
Mr. Korzak, since the time of the last hearing, you participated in several meetings with the township consultants to discuss some issues that they had raised at the time of the hearing.
yes.
And as a result of those discussions, did you make certain changes to the site design and amend the truck circulation plan to incorporate those changes?
Yes, we did.
And referring to what I have marked as Exhibit A23, which is the revised truck circulation plan, could you explain for the board and the members of the audience specifically what changes have been made to address what issues you have raised?
Sure thing. Okay, so the concerns that I heard at the last hearing were regarding the fuel truck delivery exit movement from where they're going to be filling the tanks. Lori, if you could just pull it up a little bit. The concern was the truck circulation was showing that the fuel truck would need to access the loading zone in order to make the turn out onto North Whitehorse Road. Also, the the amount of the driveway that would be,
I don't mind if it's own, sorry.
it's good. The amount of the driveway the truck would access when exiting out onto North Whitehorse. So we looked at an alternative to this circulation path, and what I was, actually we got to go one down. We made some modifications to the site layout so that now we could show the truck actually utilizing the drive aisle between the canopy and the convenience store to make the exit. That will now allow the truck to exit without using the loading zone and significantly reduces the amount of the drive aisle that would be accessed by the truck during the exit movements. Basically, it would not have to go into the oncoming lane for anyone that was trying to turn into the Wawa. As you can see here, the truck would never go much further than halfway through over the center line of the driveway. In order to accomplish this, you can see here we had to bump out the radius around the gasoline canopy, and we'll stripe that area. That area would only be utilized by the truck when it's exiting, so they can make that turn here. And we also had to modify the curb radius for the exit onto North Whitehorse Road.
I'm sorry, I'm having some difficulty seeing what you're pointing to.
Sorry.
And maybe you could indicate, we're looking at the revised A22, revised site plan incorporating changes made to internal
Yep.
So, okay, thank you.
The turning movement that I'm walking through is on the bottom right of the plan.
Just for clarification, it's A23 that they're pointing out right now.
Okay. We're looking at this is A22 and this is A20. Yeah, okay, they're not marked on them.
So in order for us to show this alternative movement, like I said, we had to widen the drive aisle on the side of the canopy here, revise the radius, curb radius, for North Whitehorse Road. So, and also, we're going to need to increase the width of the drive aisle that is between the canopy and the convenience store. The one issue that this causes, which may require additional zoning relief, is because we're widening this drive aisle, we're going to have to push the layout towards the total storage, total rental lot where they're storing the construction equipment. That is to the northeast of the Wawa lot. There's a requirement that you must provide a 10-foot buffer, and in order to gain that additional space, the additional width of this drive aisle, we would be looking at reducing the width of the buffer between the Wawa lot and the total rental storage equipment lot, and potentially need a waiver to reduce the parking space depth from code requirement 20 feet down to 18 feet. With that reduction, there would be at least 2 feet of overhang that would be available for any cars parking there that could overhang the curb that would run along the side of or the front of the parking spaces.
And there was prior zoning here for the board relief granted with respect to that buffer, correct?
That's correct, yes.
So, the applicant would be agreeable to go back and amending that application to request any additional relief that may be necessary as a result of these changes to the plan, is that correct?
That's correct.
And then, as you mentioned, there may also be waivers that may be necessary at the time of land development, correct?
That's correct.
And will there be appropriate signage placed on the site to restrict the truck movement in accordance with PennDOT approval?
Yes, there will. Some comments came up as well in the Township Engineers review letter requesting that, okay, if your trucks are no longer going to utilize the driveway on Bailey Forge Road, would you be providing anything to restrict the movements or turning movements into that driveway for tractor trailer sized vehicles? And the answer is yes, we can provide some signs that have been approved in the past on other Wawa projects by PennDOT to provide no turn movements for any of the trucks over 30 feet to utilize the Valley Forge Road driveway.
Another issue that was raised.
What's that? Left out, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, thanks, Mike.
Debbie, one more thing, I'm sorry, and also to prevent any trucks from making a left out of the North Whitehorse Road driveway, we would provide no turning movements for trucks on that signage for that driveway as well. There is a 13-ton weight limit, a half mile up from the intersection of Valley Forge Road and North Whitehorse, so a truck would not be able to go up that road by law, I guess, regardless.
And another issue that was raised at the last hearing was whether the site could accommodate an oversized parking space. Did you also consider whether an oversized parking space could be provided on the site?
Yes, we did. Okay, so that would be Exhibit A22 then?
A22, correct.
Okay, so as you can see here, we are providing normal parking spaces pretty much everywhere around the site perimeter that is available. Really, the only feasible place I can see to add a oversized parking space would be to the northwest of the store. Right here, there is a 10 by 50 foot oversized parking space proposed. Once again, there would be some relief that would have to be granted for that as well, because that parking space would be located within the planted buffer, the 10-foot planted buffer along this property. Now, we are already encroaching in this landscape buffer previously. You can see here there's a dimension of 3.6 feet for the driveway curb. So we would have to extend or get additional relief for the oversized parking space, because this truck space or this oversized parking space would basically go right up to the property line. And as you can see here, I anticipate that there would need to be a retaining wall along that side of the oversized parking space due to the difference in grade elevation between the total storage or total rental storage lot and the Wawa lot. The total rental storage lot is higher in elevation than the Wawa lot. This would be the bottom of the wall. The top of the wall would be on the rental storage lot. And potentially easements would need to be granted for any of the geogrid that is associated with the retaining wall, for structural support of the wall, so that those can remain or be installed on the adjacent property.
And because of the design issues that you mentioned with the retaining wall and the potential easements, is it your understanding that the applicant can't unequivocally agree to provide that space at this time, but would be willing to further look into at the time of land development and see if that design is feasible?
Yes.
That's all the questions I have.
All right, Mr.
Yeah, Jason, just a couple questions. As we look at Exhibit A22, which is up on the screen, and I guess it's to the east, the boundary to the east, if this is this north-oriented?
North is basically the corner of the lot.
Okay, perfect. So, but you know what I'm pointing to, the interior boundary between this site and the total rental site on that stretch right there?
Yep.
And as I look at that plan detail, it seems to show and reflect a 10-foot detail. Is that just something, you said before you might need zoning relief from the ZHB for it. Is that just something you need to confirm? And
That's correct, yes. You can see, though, on this plan here, we do not have the increased drive aisle between the store and the convenience store shown. We have to increase this by 2 feet.
okay, so Exhibit A22 would need to be modified to reflect the revisions that are shown in the A23, Exhibit A23, lower right corner turning radius plan.
Turning movement plan, that's
Turning
correct.
movement plan,
Yep.
Okay. And then, just for clarification for everybody, what's on the other side of that interior boundary?
The other side of this boundary would be where the total rental storage equipment lot would be storing any of their equipment before it is rented out to contractors or whoever is looking to rent the construction equipment.
And that's the same as well with the other interior boundary, correct?
On the northwesterly side here,
Yep.
pretty much, you can see the business has a metal garage over here. They're not storing equipment. They're basically utilizing this to access the storage equipment lot. But it would be the total rental. It is part of the total rental lot, yes.
That's all the questions I have. Thanks.
Board members, any questions?
I'm looking at your turning radiuses, and wouldn't this be solved if instead of 10 gas pumps, you only put in 8?
Well, we have the 5 fuel dispensers
yeah.
and with the 10. No, it would not be solved by that way because based on the way the truck has to make their movements and maneuvering, the fuel truck has to be facing this direction during the fill operations.
Mm-hmm.
The ports on the fuel underground storage tanks are on the passenger side, and that's a safety precautions. They don't want to extend any hoses across the area between the truck and the gasoline canopy.
I understand that, but I'm looking at the bottom right, you have a truck that's making that really tight turn, and if there are 2 cars there, which you only have 1 in your picture, if there are 2 cars there fueling on that one side, then
Yeah, keep in
it's
mind.
gonna get hit. That car is gonna get hit by that truck.
Keep in mind, there will only be 1 fuel position on this side. The other fuel
Okay.
position is on the opposite side of the fuel dispenser.
And you're also assuming that people are going to be parking correctly and, you know, you're dealing with people.
I understand there's a bunch of
Okay.
good drivers in
So, I
Schuylkill
mean,
Township.
if you only have 4 pumps, you make that whole area smaller and you can avoid all of that. Can't you? I mean, am I,
Does the turning radius of the truck after fueling preclude it regardless? Does it push it, does the turning radius of the truck push it back, not the pump itself or something?
Just the basically 180 turn is what's limiting in its ability and where it's going. If this was, and I mentioned in the previous hearing that if this is an issue where and it's quite common that a portion of the truck will pass underneath the canopy, that the operations manager at Wawa will sometimes put out a cone when they know the fuel truck is coming there so that nobody will be parking there when the fuel truck is expected to deliver.
this one here, this one here, this one here,
That one's cuts back under the
Would-
canopy on the other
and
side.
this one here.
Would elimination of any of the parking spots resolve the turning radius issue?
No, it would not, because as I show it here, those parking spaces are not getting encroached on by the turning movements. The widening of the drive aisle alleviated any encroachment from the truck onto the parking spaces.
So I still don't understand how removing a pump isn't going to change this. That doesn't make any sense to me. You're making more space by removing a pump.
So we'd only have 4
4 pumps.
And I don't think Wawa would be able to operate the store with just 4 pumps, 4 fuel dispensers.
Can you speak to what is considered to be the minimum and the preferred design criteria for Wawa for multi-fuel fuel dispensers? What's absolutely required for them to build a Wawa, and then what is simply preferred?
5 spaces is the minimum to go, 5 fuel dispensers is the minimum they'll go with. The most common I've seen is either 6 or 8.
And what do you have on the plan right now?
We have 5. Exxon currently has 6. That's correct.
So Wawa would prefer 5 pumps over safety?
Well, like I said, I don't envision this as a safety concern due to the infrequency of the deliveries of fuel, as well as this is very common in any of the truck circulation plans that I've ever run, where a portion of the delivery trucks will encroach beneath the canopy.
In light of Ms. Majewski's questions, I would like to put our traffic consultant, Matt Hammond, on to just further opine on why he believes this truck circulation pattern is safe and would accommodate all the industry standards and PennDOT standards as well.
All right, we'll hear that when the time comes.
Okay.
All right.
Sorry, I thought you were done.
Yep.
Anything else from the board?
I have another question.
Sure.
So I know that you mentioned that if you eliminated parking spots, it wouldn't resolve the turning radius concern that Supervisor Majewski raised. But if you eliminated the 9 spots on the, I'm going to say the right-hand side of the building and moved the building over, wouldn't that address it somehow?
If these parking spaces were
Yeah.
removed?
Could
Yes,
you-
at that point, I guess that would help move the building back and provide additional separation. Then we are below the number of parking spaces that Wawa requires for operational purposes.
Doesn't Wawa's minimum standards, aren't they 40 spaces and you have 50?
50 parking spaces,
They're 50 is minimum?
yes. For this size front-back store is 50 parking spaces.
Yeah, we're really not supposed to, okay. All right, anything else? I've got a couple of questions, if I may, Mr. Vortek. You mentioned that there'll be signage up to restrict trucks from entering a certain way and requiring them to leave a certain way, is that right?
There would be signage so that there would be no trucks allowed to turn into the Valley Forge driveway, as well as make a left out of the North Whitehorse.
Does Wawa have any facilities nearby where this sort of sign is in operation so the board can look at it?
I believe there is, yes, and maybe the traffic consultant would be better to provide what
right.
store that might be.
The concern I have is enforcement. If a truck violates this sign, what happens?
I am not unfortunately, I'm not a police officer. I'm not sure what the
I'm not sure,
ramifications
I'll
are.
put this in form of a question. I'm not sure whether the township ordinance package can include something on private property about turning, and I may have to look into that, but I'm concerned that people might just ignore the sign about where they're supposed to go.
Understood. Previous circulation plans that we have prepared showed that a truck can make the turning movement from that driveway if they happen to. In terms of how it's enforced or what the penalty is for somebody, for a truck to make that turning movement, I'm not sure what that is.
All right. I want to ask you about the oversized space that I guess is for landscape trucks. We've talked about that. Could you put that up on the screen, someone, whoever is doing that? There it is. And this parking space is right below the red block, is that correct?
That's correct.
Right, and my question is, in terms of a truck pulling into that lot, is there enough room for one of these landscape trucks that are pretty long? I have no measurements, of course, but would there be enough room for them to get in so that the rear of the, the rear of the two-part vehicle would be, enough in so it wouldn't be blocking the road? Follow my question?
Yes, I don't have that truck turning movement. If it required these radii to get widened out, I could look into that and confirm that's the case. Like I said, that would be more, we would pursue that more during land development. But the length of an F-350 with a 24-foot long trailer is approximately 45 feet. This is 50 feet plus the additional radius.
All right.
For the additional diagonals in.
All right. It's
So,
not
yeah.
going to help us if the back of it's sticking out, when it tries to pull in.
Yeah, we would make sure that it can fully park within the dedicated or
And
proposed
if I can
oversize.
try to simplify what's going on here, I think you and people you're meeting with are recognizing that there's not a huge need for a setback between Wawa and total rental because they're in this together, basically. So you're seeking to move some of the facilities closer to the property line because it's not like it's a separate company or a separate property. Is that essentially what you're doing?
It's a separate property, but given the type of use that it is not as critical to buffer, in our opinion, or my opinion, from a equipment rental lot, business than it would be, say, if it was a residential property.
All right, that's all I have. Any parties who have been designated parties have any questions?
Just about traffic now.
Just about this testimony, okay. All right,
Actually, I have one more question.
go ahead.
Have you spoken to, I don't know who to ask this question to. I'm going to ask you, but if it's not appropriate, I'll ask someone else. Have you spoken to Total Rental about removing that buffer to put this parking space in?
Yes, we did.
And they're okay with it?
They are, yes, they're generally okay with it, yes. If,
Okay.
We met with them on Tuesday of this week
Okay.
to go over the potential of this.
Okay.
And discuss potential of a retaining wall and possibly an easement.
Okay.
Having heard all the cross, Ms. Schultzky, is there any redirect examination you wish to pursue?
No redirect.
All right, well then, Mr. Bortek, you may step down. And do you want to move for admission now or later?
I was just going to put Mr. Hammond up to answer any, additional questions about the truck circulation from a traffic engineer perspective as well.
Well, that's fine. Why don't you lead him through where you think he should go?
Yeah,
It's okay.
Mr. Hammond, you were previously sworn under oath at the last hearing, correct?
That's correct.
And you heard Mr. Korzak's testimony with respect to the truck circulation plan, revised plan that was introduced this evening?
I have.
And do you agree with his conclusions that the truck circulation plan works and provides for a safe circulation of delivery and fuel trucks?
I do.
And can you expand upon that in terms of why you believe that the movements are sufficient to accommodate the vehicles?
Sure. And I don't know if we can go back. Excuse me. I believe it was, is it 23?
Exhibit 23, correct.
Exhibit 23 with the turning movement. So If you recall, at the last hearing, there were a number of truck turning templates that were presented. One of the concerns that was expressed by the board and staff through the review process was the fact that if, in the event there was a delivery truck in the loading zone, which I'm pointing to in the bottom right-hand corner of Exhibit A23, in this loading zone, if there was a large delivery truck positioned in the loading zone, unloading materials or goods into the Wawa, the fact that the fueling truck, if it were to exit at the same time and utilize the White Horse Road access point, would need to drive through that loading zone area in order to effectuate their turn and at the same time take up the majority of that driveway. So in order to address those concerns, we, in conjunction with discussions with township professionals, looked at changes that we could make to the plan, which were described by Mr. Korzak with respect to circulation. And what I would say is that in addition to the fact that what is shown on Exhibit A23 is not unusual and is quite common on Wawa facilities, I would say that I would almost look at this as an alternative as well. We have shown by virtue of the previous exhibits that the fueling truck can continue around straight through, utilize a portion of the loading zone, utilize the full width of that driveway to make a right turn to come down to the signal. The purpose of this exhibit is to show that based on changes we can make to the site, not only can the fueling trucks do that, but they can also utilize this area here, which would be the preferred route, this area here being the bottom right-hand corner of Exhibit A23, circulate around in between the store and the fueling islands around the back, and then out straight through to White Horse Road. In terms of removing any parking spaces and how that would have an effect on the circulation pattern, what I would say is that whenever these truck turning templates are run, whenever they're, we look at the path of the truck, the wheel path, the trailer overhang, we want to make sure that whatever we're providing, that those trucks do not encroach on any parking spaces, because the likelihood of those parking spaces being occupied is a lot greater than if the loading zone to be occupied. So all of these templates here that you see on Exhibit A23 do not encroach on any of the parking spaces, nor would they in terms of any design that we would provide. Removing a pump, again, I don't know, in my professional opinion, that it would have any effect on the turning radii or the wheel or the truck path. Obviously, this is showing, this exhibit is showing that the truck must circulate slightly under the canopy in order to effectuate that first maneuver, but that's not unlike what occurs at a lot of other Wawa locations and is shown on other exhibits that have been provided, where the fuel truck, based on where the underground storage tanks are located and where the truck is coming from and going to, that a portion of that truck would not pass underneath the canopy. It's a quite common, it's a quite frequent experience, happens at many Wawa locations. I would say that the truck turning templates are meant to be conservative. They're assuming that the truck is traveling at certain speeds. Now, obviously, we looked to provide an appropriate truck turning path in regards to the bottom right on Exhibit A23. But in addition, if the fueling delivery truck were to be leaving the site, and typically that may occur once a day, depending on the amount of fuel they sell, once every 2 days. If there was a car in that area and the truck was trying to make its turn, which we show it can, and the car wasn't positioned correctly at the pump, then that truck obviously would be very wary of that and take that into consideration. They would also have the ability to exit out through the loading zone and make that turn, albeit it's not the preferred maneuver, but it is a maneuver that can be made. So we've tried to show that there are various ways that these trucks can circulate this site, not affect parking, not affect any of the vehicles at the fueling positions, and still address some of the comments that were expressed. Another discussion item with respect to the signage and the no truck signage. I would say, I'm sure there's multiple locations, maybe closer than the example I'm going to give you, but we actually pulled some of the signage from a recently constructed and approved Wawa on state roads that provided the same type of signage where Wawa agreed to restrict delivery trucks to certain locations. Unfortunately, this Wawa is located in Booth Wynn on 452 and Meeting House Road, I think it's Meeting House Road, where we provided that same signage to restrict trucks to certain driveways. To answer your question about enforcement, I don't know the answer to that, whether or not that's something that Wawa or the applicant gave the township authority to enforce. I will tell you that while there are many different types of deliveries that occur at Wawa, the two main deliveries, the two larger trucks, the truck that services the store and the fuel truck are both controlled by Wawa. Wawa gives those delivery drivers routing cards. They tell them what accesses they can use and what accesses they cannot. It doesn't say that the Coca-Cola truck that's coming on site may not heed the signs for whatever reason, but after that happens, what's supposed to happen is the store manager, if that's observed, is supposed to reach out to the the delivery driver, whoever the company is, and explain to them that that access is not meant for trucks. But as Jason had mentioned, the driveway's been designed as such that trucks can utilize that driveway if they so choose. It's not a safety issue. It's more of a preference that we wanted to keep the trucks off the Valley Forge Road, and we didn't want trucks making a left out and traveling up through the residential area in Whitehorse.
And Matt, how many Wawas would you say you worked on over the course of your career?
I have been involved in convenience stores with gasoline, over 500.
And would you say that many of those other stores have had circulation patterns similar to this one?
Yes, absolutely.
And are you aware of any safety issues or conflicts that have occurred since those stores have been opened regarding the delivery pattern?
In regards to delivery trucks, I am not.
And you may not know the answer to this question, but with respect to the existing Exxon gas station, given the size of that store and the size of the pumps, which is more than what Wawa is proposing with a larger canopy, would you happen to know whether they currently have their fuel truck deliveries encroaching underneath the canopy?
I do not know the answer to that.
Okay. That's all the questions I have.
Okay. Mr. Crotty?
I have no question.
All right, board? And seeing none, and parties? Only one party, okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Hammond.
Thank you.
Does that complete your presentation?
That
or
does this
all right.
time. Thank you.
I don't recall, in terms of documents, did you move for admission last
I
time?
did not. I would move to that Exhibit A22 and A23 be admitted into the record.
All right, did we take all the others before?
I thought I had introduced them, but
All right,
if
if
I
you
haven't,
you're asking for all of them to 23. Is there any objection?
No objection.
All right, seeing none, they're admitted. All right, at this point, are you resting the applicant's case?
I am.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Crotty?
Yeah, I'll call Al Federico, who is the township's traffic engineer. Keep traffic going. The one on the right now. There you are. You should be sworn.
Yes.
Al, can you state your name and your business for the record, please?
Al Federico, Albert Federico Consulting.
And what kind of work do you do?
I am a civil engineer with a specialty in transportation.
Can you walk us through your background and experience in that role?
Graduate of Penn State University, class of '91 with the degree of civil engineering. I've been practicing primarily transportation engineering for 30 years. I can't believe I can't use the over 25 line anymore. I am licensed in Pennsylvania, Delaware, and Florida, also certified through the Institute of Transportation Engineers as a professional traffic operations engineer.
All right, Mr. Cronin, you have the right to
That's fine.
put it in if you like, or accept the stipulation.
I'll accept that stipulation. The only thing I would note is I've just handed out Exhibit PC2. I'm sorry, Kira. Exhibit PC2, which is Al's CD. Alan, in being the township's traffic engineer, what's your role with respect to zoning and land development applications?
So in this case, just representing the township for this application, my role is to review it against the applicable municipal codes and customary and expected traffic engineering standards.
And did you prepare a review letter as part of your work?
Yes.
I'll hand out what I'll mark as Exhibit PC3. Any other parties want to review letter? No, Al, were you present during the testimony of the applicant's witnesses at the prior hearing?
Yes.
And am I correct that you've met with the applicant's witnesses and our engineers in between the hearings to discuss some of your concerns?
Yes, there have been the two virtual meetings that were referenced in the previous testimony that was just given.
And so if we look at Exhibit PC3, which is your review letter dated June 15th, 2023, can you just provide us background of what you're noting in this and when this came about in comparison to the subsequent meetings you had with the applicant?
So yes, this review was completed based on the materials provided with the original application, so it does not reflect anything that has been modified or revised since there's been some new information presented at the previous hearing and at this hearing. The primary issue, I would say, for this is the improvements to the intersection. The applicant's traffic study determined that to mitigate the project's impact, that there would need to be some improvements. The most substantive one would be putting left turn lanes on White Horse Road. Knowing that that is a somewhat constrained road, I noted that fairly substantially in my review, because if they said they're going to do it, often you see applicants say they're going to do something and then can they do it? In this case, since most of the land that they need to do these improvements appears to be from total rental, the applicant appears, at least based on what they've presented, to be in a, I would call, a better than average position to actually implement the improvements that they are recommending.
And now, just to interrupt you, would it be a condition or kind of caveat of your review that, in terms of any favorable position to the application, that the intersection improvements be implemented?
Yes.
In other words, if the intersection improvements were not implemented, your review would substantially change?
Yes.
And have you had a chance to review the more recent submissions that the applicant submitted tonight?
Yes, what they submitted tonight and the roadway improvement plan that was provided as well. If you go through the review, you'll see that the materials that were originally submitted did not actually show the widening, and they have submitted now drawings at a conceptual level, but that show the implementation of the proposed intersection improvements. Additionally, as has been discussed a good bit this evening, there were concerns about some of the truck turning movements. I'm going to say I think that the applicant has made some improvements really to provide a path for the fuel truck to exit the site without encroaching into the other side of the driveway. I know there were some concerns expressed about whether or not trucks should use the Valley Forge Road driveway. I would expect a lot of that will be hashed out, particularly through the PennDOT permitting. I think in large number, there really is adequate room for trucks to use the Valley Forge driveway unless they're trying to make the hard U-turn to get to the fueling, the fuel tanks.
And with respect to the exiting movements onto that road, the applicant's proposed signage, is there anything physical that you'd recommend in addition to the signage, or is the signage enough?
By that road, are you referring to White Horse Road?
Yes.
No, I would not recommend anything additional physical to try to restrict the trucks on that.
Why would that be?
I think we would still want to allow passenger vehicles to make a left if they have a destination on White Horse Road, and I'm not sure you could necessarily design something that would prohibit the trucks that wouldn't also prevent passenger vehicles from making that movement as well.
And same question now, but for Valley Forge Road.
Valley Forge Road, the prohibition that they are proposing was, I believe, came from their initial scoping review from PennDOT. At this level, it does appear adequate, although once they go into final design, land development, PennDOT permitting, I suspect parts of it may change, but it would anticipate it to be substantially similar to what's been presented so far.
And if we look at Exhibit A23, which is that truck turning movement plan that we went through tonight, one of the questions from the board was about the potential for eliminating the fifth pump. Would that take care of that turning radius issue, or is that going to be there regardless?
I haven't looked at that in great detail, but my initial impression is that removing a pump would not really impact that. A lot of what we're seeing with this truck turning movement is because it's a large truck, it has a very large radius. So it's got to make the big sweeping turn, and shortening up that the pumps or removing the pump, I'm not sure would necessarily improve that condition.
Now, with respect to your June 15th review letter, can you walk us through any of the notable comments in it as they pertain to the plan that as has been revised?
Well, the first three comments were, we already spoke about dealing with the intersection improvements. Comments 4 and 5 are somewhat technical in nature. I expect they'll be addressed when they go to PennDOT. At this point, it appears that the improvements that they are showing are going to adequately mitigate their impact. So some of this may actually be diving down deeper into the design details for because they're going to have to go through a lot of steps to rebuild that traffic signal. And some of these items will then come into play. Comment 6 regarding site distance from the driveways accessing Lot 2. I trust that's something that can be addressed in land development. Comment 7 mentioned, showing the improvements, which they did, the site distance, and a little more detail on the pedestrian connectivity, making sure, with all the new sidewalk, that people are able to get in and out. Number 8 goes to the turning templates, which again we've spoke about. Number 9 was about the oversized parking, and again they've shown that if the board would like them to provide a space for oversized vehicle, they do have a path to pursue to do that. My understanding is I'm not entirely sure that the board would want to encourage that, but that is at the board's discretion. And my understanding in meeting with them was that they were presenting this as something that they would do if the board so desired for that oversized spot. Number 10 are some more pedestrian-oriented, which probably will be addressed in land development, PennDOT permitting, comments to try to maintain the pedestrian network, enhance the pedestrian network and ensure that, you know, people are able to get to the Wawa if they are not driving.
That's all the questions I have for Al.
All right, Ms. Schuylkill?
Is this on, or? Okay.
You're on.
Okay. I just have a few very quick questions, Mr. Federico. As you mentioned, your letter dated June 15th was obviously prepared prior to the July 12th hearing when a number of our exhibits were introduced, including the road improvement plan and the latest revised truck movement plan introduced this evening, correct?
Yes.
And assuming that the road improvements as proposed are in fact installed, you know, once it goes through the permitting process, would you agree that the applicant has in fact mitigated any increase in traffic for purposes of meeting the applicable conditional use standard?
Yes.
That's all the questions I have.
All right, questions from the board, if any? All right, Mr. Federico, I just had one topic I want to go over. This business of the oversized parking area for the trucks. When we heard last time, the applicant said, well, as a matter of their experience, if there are no oversized parking areas, the landscapers will realize that and go somewhere else to another Wawa.
Mm-hmm.
If they have or advertise, you know, we have an oversized spot and there are 5 trucks that want to get there, could you have any thoughts about whether putting an oversized one space there is better or worse in the big picture? It's in the category of be careful what you ask for, you might get it. So.
That is possible. Depending how it's signed, you may also have standard cars try to get in there. I would suspect that while Wawa has their minimum number of required spaces, the 50 spaces, a lot of what we deal with when we're reviewing commercial type uses is not necessarily that they need all those spaces and they expect all those spaces to be full. They also like their parking lot to appear empty, or at least empty enough so people won't drive by. I would anticipate that the number of times that you have 50 cars parked there is going to be few and far between. And if someone with a landscaping truck really had to, they would probably find a few spaces along the back wall by the dumpster that they could squeeze themselves into.
All right, one other question. You mentioned that you have believed and still believe that there should be 2 left turn lanes on Whitehorse Road and that they were contained in the applicant's traffic impact statement. Do you believe that if this application is approved, that there should be a condition requiring those 2 left turn lanes?
One, yes. 2, just the terminology, because 2 left turn lanes almost sounds like you mean double left turn lanes. But yes, a left turn lane on each Whitehorse Road approach, yes.
All right, and in your direct examination, you said that you would recommend this condition, but you mentioned, used the words intersectional improvements. Are there any other improvements that you would put in the same category as these 2 left turn lanes that should be required as a condition?
Yes, I did not, thank you, I did not note that because it's a little more minor, but I believe the traffic study also included a recommendation to widen a little bit of Valley Forge Road to extend the center area to provide for left turns into the site. And that is also reflected on the roadway improvement plan that they had previously submitted.
Okay, so there are 3 things, 2 left turn lanes and a widening in Valley Forge Road, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. That's all I have. I'm sorry?
I'm sorry, do you have a question?
Go ahead.
Hello, good evening. I did have a question, and I may have misunderstood the expert for the applicant, but I believe that he testified that some of this redesign might make the parking spaces on the northern side of the property a little bit shorter, if I'm saying that accurately. Do you have any, my first question is, do you have any concerns about, not with necessarily the circulation, but with the ability of the cars to pull in and out, or any of that kind of egress or ingress due to the condensed depth of those parking spots?
No. For vehicles to enter and exit a space, the primary actually variables in that are how wide the aisle is, and they widened the aisle from 28 to 30 feet. So cars have a lot of room to line themselves up as they pull into the space, plus the spaces are 10 feet wide, which is pretty wide. The 18-foot depth space, or the depth of the space being 18 feet instead of 20, as the applicant's expert testified, there is the potential to overhang a little bit into the buffer, but also, again, because that aisle is a 30-foot aisle, your standard driveway aisles are typically around 24 feet. So there's a great deal of space there. I think that would be adequate.
My second question is, I believe Mr. Crotty asked you whether reducing the number of pumps would improve the turning radius, and you testified no. Would reducing the number of parking spots for the proposed development improve any of the turning radiuses that are on the proposed plan?
I'm not entirely sure how to answer that. I mean, the turning radius is the turning radius. You know, a truck of that size needs 40-some feet to turn around. You start taking out parking spaces, moving things around. I mean, you can, and that to some extent, I think that's what they did, is not take out parking spaces, but they made some adjustments to the layout of the site to accommodate a very conservative turning estimate from those. And what they've provided shows that, which was the concern we had, that, you know, a fuel truck can exit the site without encroaching into the other lane of the driveway. I think that was our primary concern from a safety perspective. I think on-site, I don't think a fuel truck driver is going to intentionally run into a car that's poorly parked. I hope. I think they put people reasonably responsible in charge of those big trucks. Not always, but it's, you know, it may take some time. He may be slower to their next, but I mean, I think they've shown that they can physically do it. As we said, you know, drivers are drivers. Maybe somebody will do something, but they have shown that it can be done in a safe manner.
All right, any questions? Go ahead.
So do you believe the truck turning template as amended and presented as an alternate there, do you believe that that solves the major safety issues that were brought up in the last hearing?
I would say yes.
Thank you.
All right, our party, questions? No, all right. All right, Mr. Crotty, you may call your next witness.
Yeah, so my next witness will be Paul Bettinger from the Township Engineer's Office.
I do.
Debbie, are you agreeable to stipulating to Paul's expertise in civil engineering as well?
All right, he's accepted.
Okay, thanks. Paul, am I correct that you've been at both the conditional use hearings related to this application?
That is correct.
And you're familiar with the site and the ordinances that are applicable to it?
Yes, I am.
And did you prepare a review letter first dated June 16th, but then I think you later amended it August 22nd?
That is correct.
I'll hand this out. I'll mark this in PC4. Now, Paul, can you walk us through just generally how you prepare your review letter?
Yes, absolutely. My role as a township engineer is to be, neutral when looking at applications. So I reviewed this against the township ordinances to provide an assessment to the applicant, to the township's planning commission, to the township's board of supervisors for consideration for the conditional use application.
And this letter was initially prepared on June 16th, but you later amended it. Can you kind of walk us through the construction of it, what the italics mean versus what the non-italicized language means?
Certainly. The original version of the letter dated June 16th, 2023 was based off the application as received by the township for conditional use. Through the course of the initial hearing, there were some additional exhibits that were prepared and distributed, which we reviewed in conjunction with the application, and that's why we made the amendments. So the amendment was completed on August 22nd, 2023, as noted on the exhibit that everyone is looking at. And as far as the letter is concerned, the blue italics were basically the amended items that we added into it. Basically talking about what was the original comment, what was received, and how it was either handled or not.
Paul, I'm sorry, there's nothing in blue on our
Yeah.
copies.
Yeah, I don't think I printed out in color, Paul.
Okay.
Charge a lot more for that. But am I correct, it's italicized for the new language?
Yeah, italicized and italicized and bold.
Italicized and bold?
Yes.
Okay.
Bold. Now, can you walk us through the notable items in your review letter for the board's edification?
Certainly. Again, a lot of the comments were generated based off of the truck turning templates and the concerns that were discussed publicly. And as was mentioned previously, there were some virtual meetings with the applicant and the applicant's engineers to get a better understanding and to review some additional revisions. The revisions that were distributed today were what was recently discussed this past week. The applicant has made some various changes to the plans, as we've already discussed, about the truck turning templates, some curb, as well as the oversized vehicle. They've moved they've increased the size of some of the drive aisles to better accommodate in particular, the exiting fuel truck, to give an alternate version. There are in my letter several items that I say these exhibits did not address this comment, and it should be noted that that is just an informational type of comment, that they weren't, when they submitted the plans for the last hearing, it wasn't with the intention of addressing my letter. So I wanted to make sure that everyone's aware of that was not the intention. So if you see something that says a comment response that, like, hey, this hasn't been addressed, really, that is something that will be will be addressed at the land development process of the application.
And so would it be your recommendation that the applicant satisfy all outstanding conditions in your review letter as part of any decision the board might potentially make on this application?
Yes, my letter, Mr. Frederico's letter, as well as PennDOT's letter.
And then from a zoning perspective, are there any other comments that you need to walk the board through or talk them through related to the application or the proposed use of the site?
No, as far as the zoning is concerned, some of the comments talked about lighting, which will again be handled at the land development stage. Some notes and things like that can easily be added onto the plans. It's my understanding that the applicant doesn't have any issues with adding those onto the plans. The one, just to note, as far as zoning is concerned, that the oversized parking stall and the retaining wall will require zoning relief from the zoning hearing board. We've heard testimony about that already from the applicant. So I just want the board to understand that the application will have to go back in front of the zoning hearing board.
Okay, and that's all the questions I have for Paul.
Ms. Schuylkill?
I have no questions.
Members of the board?
Paul, can you explain, I'm sorry, thank you, Mark. Can you explain number 11? Regarding the number of parking spaces?
Yes, absolutely. So what that is entailing is that the Wawa, based off of the size that's being proposed, is required to have 38 parking stalls. The applicant is proposing a total of 50 parking stalls, so they're over by 12. But what I'm trying to note in that is that because of that, there's 10 pumps. The board of supervisors at their discretion can require, or excuse me, there's 10 pumps, they could require an additional 20 spaces, which would take it from the 38 required spaces to 58 required spaces. Again, the applicant has already put an additional 12 spaces into this, so if the board of supervisors would require the additional parking spaces, the applicant would need 8 more.
So I guess my question for you is, how do you feel about that?
It's my opinion that 50 parking spaces is adequate to service this facility.
May I proceed? I have one question, Paul. Are you satisfied? You mentioned that you've gone through the points in your letter, and you believe that the applicant will comply with all of them. Based on your discussions, are there any points in your letter that you have reason to believe that the applicant cannot resolve, either now or later in the land development process? The two comments that would come up would also have to do with the total rental. The one being on North Whitehorse Pike, the left-hand turn lane that would be turning onto Route 23. The applicant would have to get the additional right-of-way from Total Rentals property to do that. Additionally, for the retaining wall that will be required for the oversized parking, that wall, although there's been no design or details for it at this time, it should be assumed that there would be tiebacks or geogrid that would need to be permanently installed on the Total Rental property. So there would be an easement that would be required not only for the construction of that wall, but also that there would be no disturbance to that geogrid, hence causing the wall failure. All right, thank you. Any questions from our party? Can you give us your name again, please? I'm sorry.
Dana Coleman, 23 Vincent Road. I'm right behind the proposed lot.
And you were granted party
Yes.
status? Okay.
I was here at the last meeting. I'm not sure if this is a question for now or for another time, but my question was about the landscaping. I do see landscaping was in this letter, so I'm not sure if it's to be brought up now. My question is about landscaping, a landscape buffer behind the new proposed lots and into our neighborhood. If we're going to have shaded trees to kind of buffer the sound and the light that's coming from Wawa, if we're going to have tall landscape trees or whatever, because right now we have a lot, it's not pretty, but we have a lot of mature, very tall trees that buffers pretty much everything. We don't hear anything from Exxon, we don't hear anything from Total Rental. It's very quiet in our neighborhood. 10 o'clock comes, there's no lights, you see the stars. So my concern is, how many of those trees are going to go? Are we going to have mature trees planted? How many mature trees will be on the lot to help buffer the sound and the light coming from 24-hour Wawa?
If you would like to take the heat off of Paul, my client, Giovanna, can respond to that if you would like me to.
There's no objection to having him respond. Right, go ahead. Go ahead. He's still sworn from last time.
So we did walk the property, Jason and I, with Chris Caba from Total Rental, and I did look at it, and we do have landscape buffer area, and this could be addressed in land development, but I'll address it now. Sure. So we have the landscape buffer on the interior of the Total Rental lot right now. So I also talked to the owner of the trailer park about doing the buffer on the other side of the fence, because it makes more sense than the interior fence, and putting shrubs that are going to get probably decimated, instead of putting them on the other side of the fence to buffer the residential. So I don't know exactly how many like trees we're taking down on the White Horse Auto lot, but I did look at your property and I said, well, the fence line's going to come in, and I believe you're the property, I don't have the, yes. So, and what I was saying to Chris and to Jason was we should run like arborvitaes there or something that we could do to block that area. And I would be happy to sit down and meet with you to do that.
Right now, it's like we do have a lot of.
We need you to talk in the microphone.
Oh.
I'm sorry.
Right now, like, tall shrubs are nice to look at, but we have those tall, mature trees that are literally blocking all the sound and light. And I'm just worried that once those are all gone, shrubs are nice, but they're not going to be a sound and light barrier to our whole neighborhood.
So let me grab your name and number after, and we can set up a meeting with Jason, and we can walk the property and see if we can come up with a solution for the buffer, because I am concerned about buffering that area and the residential. It was something that we talked about, and something that we can discuss with the board on how we buffer that, not on the interior of the fence, but on the other side of the fence, which makes more sense. Okay?
All right, hold it just a second now, just a minute. The law is unclear about whether people can join the party, you know, after the first hearing. Where do you live?
19 Vincent Road, so their fence is going to back up to my end of my
All right,
property.
is there any objection to, what is your name, ma'am?
Carolyn Albright?
All right, is there any objection, Ms. Albright becoming a party now that it's the second hearing? Mr. Crotty? Any
No, I don't have
objection?
any objection.
You have any objection?
I'm sorry,
I'm sorry.
apologize.
Okay, we have a resident whose property backs up to the Wawa. We're in the second hearing. The MPC is not clear about when people can join as parties. So my question is, do you have any objection to her being added to the list of parties?
Since she's adjacent, she received notice, I would have no objections.
All right, did you receive notice of the
I did.
hearings? All right, and you will agree to accept notifications by email?
Yes.
All right, would you step forward over here and give Kim your full name and address and your email address, okay?
Do you want me to do it over the
Yeah,
mic?
just
or-
do it right now. All right. All right,
Yes, we want your telephone number and everything.
Social security number.
Yeah, social security number, bank account number.
all right. I think we're finished now with Paul, is that right?
Yeah, and that's all I have as well.
All right.
I just have one point of clarification, Paul. I think you meant, when you were discussing the parking under number 11, I think you meant to say fuel dispensers instead of fuel pumps? Or fuel positions, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Yeah, there are 10 pumps that would require the 20 parking spaces, so,
We only have 5 pumps.
but both sides. The additional 2 spaces for each pump as part of the conditional. I read it to be that there were 10 pumps, that there would be on both sides. I can look, okay,
Yeah, it's 10 fuel positions.
all right.
I think we mean the same thing, I just think we're,
Yeah, there's 10, I'm sorry, 10 fueling positions, yes, I'm sorry. Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Yeah, there's 5 pumps, 10 fueling locations.
right, okay, thank you.
All right, at this point, the parties have the right to present evidence, documents, or call witnesses. Any party wish to do any of that?
If I could just move for the admission of PC 1 through PC 4.
Okay.
Appreciate that.
Ms. Schuylkill, I'm sorry, any objection to the introduction of PC 1 through PC 4 by the township? All right, they're admitted. All right, is there any reason why the record may not be closed at this point? All right, seeing none, then we will close the record. I do wish to talk a little bit about where we might go from here. As you know, under the MPC, conditional uses are treated like special exceptions. and the board has a time period of 45 days from tonight to do two things. One is to have a public vote on the application, and the second thing is to present a written decision, which will be the trigger date for any appeals. So, in talking with Lori today, we have an issue because the transcript of the first hearing just arrived, and we have to make sure that all of the supervisors are either present or have read the transcripts. So the suggestion that was made was that perhaps the board would be available to consider the evidence presented tonight and take a vote on this issue on September 13th, which would be their next regularly scheduled township meeting night. And then, depending on well, either way, the decision would be due in writing on October the 9th. Now, that's just a suggestion. You have the right to take it under advisement tonight and make your decision. You can take it all under advisement and, and do nothing until October 9th. So the MPC says only that you must do two things by October 9th, the public vote and the written decision. The problem that comes up is if you make your public vote on October 9th, it's kind of hard to have the written decision ready that night. I'd have to write 3 decisions, and then you choose one, basically. So any comment on that process from council?
I have no comment on that at all. I'm fine with proceeding that way. I did want to note, though, that I think we do have to open up a public comment period before.
Oh, you are right about that. Thank you. Okay. I'm also not suggesting briefs. The board has a right to demand or respectfully request briefs from the parties on any legal issues that are complex or frankly, I don't see any, but so I don't think there's a need for briefing. So let's reopen the record, and thank you for reminding me. Things are happening fast.
I knew you remembered.
Okay. Members of the public, at this time, people who are not parties to the proceedings have a right to come up to the microphone, identify themselves, and they must be residents of Schuylkill Township or someone who lives near the borderline who would be directly affected by the application. Please express your opinion to the board if you have comments. So step up, give your name, and the board will listen to what you say.
That's okay. Just, if you could just say your name and the street you live on.
Sure. Carolyn Albright, I live on Vincent Road. I have a couple opinions, and I'm not sure if they're all supposed to be said here. So, Vincent Road, I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. It's more of, it doesn't have speed limit signs on it. It's sort of like a cut through from north from 23 to Whitehorse. We have a number of cars already that cut through our road and speed nonstop, and so I'm afraid that adding this Wawa is going to increase that number. And it's a very narrow road, so I have cars that park on the street. I have a driveway, but it just doesn't fit all the cars in my family, plus the speeding, and there's pets and there's kids. So I have a big concern about that, and I don't know if there's anything that can be done with it, because we've asked before for speed bumps or speed limit signs, and we don't get a lot of cop presence on that road either. So somebody just sped by me this morning going an enormous amount of speed. So I have a big concern with that, because I know it's already very crowded on that intersection in the mornings, in the summer, and especially when school is in, and people use it all the time to get from one place to another because they think it's faster. So I have a big concern with that. And my other concern is just my property value. I've been there 10 years. I moved there. It was a quiet road. For the most part, it still is very quiet, but property values have gone up. But I'm afraid by putting a Wawa in, first of all, I have a personal issue. It backs up to my property. So here's the end of my property. Here's where they want to put a fence. And I'm just concerned about my property value as well. So, and the values of the houses around us.
Thank you.
Again, if you could state your name and your street address.
Yeah, my name is Paul O'Leary. I live at 9 Vincent Road. I've been there since 91. A couple problems I have with the presentation. just like her, I have a lot of the same opinions about traffic through the neighborhood. Currently, once school's in session, anybody who lives on Vincent Road knows that White Horse Road now currently backs up from 23 down to almost Rossiter in the mornings, with people coming up through 2nd Ave and then coming up and trying to make the left at the light. And when they can't do that, they do come down Vincent Road, and we get cars lining up to make a right on 23. So that's an issue now. And then once we dump all the exiting traffic that's going eastbound from Wawa onto White Horse so they can make a left onto 23, it's just going to be zoomy bad. The other thing, in looking at the plans, I mean, I've looked at the plans before, but tonight, talking about the parking for trucks with trailers, that's, I don't know what world that is, but it's not reality. This morning, I go up to the Wawa, and you're welcome, every day up at the other end of the township, and just this morning I was up there, and there was six trucks with trailers, 3 trash trucks parked in the rear of the Wawa. Most of them parked across the individual parking spaces. That's every day, and that was at 9 o'clock, and it's kind of typical. If any of you all have gone up to that wall, you know what I'm talking about. There's tons of landscaping trucks, tons of trucks, just delivery trucks parking there to get their coffee and such. There's nothing that you're going to do to that parking lot that is going to keep these guys from coming in and parking. They're not, if they don't see a spot, they're not going to say, oh, we'll go somewhere else, because these guys are all have time frames. They have to be at their job sites. They're going to park across, they're going to block, they're going to park in places where they shouldn't park, whether there's a long spot or just take up a bunch of other spots. They're going to park there. You're not going to stop it. The police don't have any say, unfortunately, about it. The only person that could do anything would be the Wawa manager, who would be like a traffic cop in there. And we know that's not going to happen because, you know, he doesn't want to put himself in that spot. So to think that adding one 45-foot parking spot or no 45-foot parking spot is going to make a difference of how many trucks with trailers come in the morning is just not reality. It happens at every, whether it's Wawa or Exxon, these trucks come in. They want their stuff, and they're going to get it. And comparing Exxon and Wawa, that's apples and oranges, because Exxon's very low volume. Wawa, as we know, is huge volume. But, you know, only making right-hand turns onto 23 out of Wawa, all the morning traffic, 80% of your traffic in the morning is coming eastbound. They're the ones that are going to go into that Wawa, and then they're going to come back out and have to make a left on 23. And if you don't think that's going to mess up traffic in the morning, then you're not from this area. So that's just, I mean, I hate losing my nighttime sky after 10 o'clock, and I hate losing my nice, quiet evenings. But, you know, if I can't do anything to stop that, that's unfortunate, and that's why I moved to Schuylkill Township back in '91 when I did. But these analyses you're doing with traffic and all that, you're not taking into, you need a psychologist to testify here, not engineers, because we know what the nature of people are, what happens. All you have to do is look around. So, something to think about. Thank you. Thank you.
My name is Grace Krieger, and I live over in the Moore Hall. Yes, my name is Grace Krieger. Yes, Cregier. And I live at 106 Moore Hall Drive, right over in the Moore Hall Division. I'm only a couple houses in from the 23 intersection. First of all, everything that the previous gentleman just said, he's so right. Like, he used a big word, reality. There's one thing to say signs and this and that, it's reality. That area in there is so congested. And, you know, to reiterate what he said, once the school starts up again in a couple of weeks, it's a mess. It's a mess. And 23 is a mess. And Whitehorse is a mess. And I think we're just adding to, I think what we're doing is we're setting ourselves up for something bad. A bad accident, a kid on a bike or something. And I don't want to see that. I don't have children, but I don't want to see that. And, you know, when you talk about signs, there's a sign at the end of my street, right on 23, that says, no left turn from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. or 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. If I could tell you how many cars I watch every single day of the year making that left-hand turn, and police have been there, they've set up, they've done what they could do, really. People just ignore it, or they don't see it, or they don't care. You know, I feel like I'm the only one that drives across, and if you know what I'm talking about, drive to the other development and around. And the other thing that I, as a single person, and I moved out here about 20 years ago, because I liked the peace of it. I liked getting away from down a Route 30 and everything like that. I worry about crime. You know, I did work in Philadelphia for over 15 years, and the crime situation has really, really changed over the years. And it's not in Philadelphia only anymore. It's coming out here. And I'm sure you've all read, because I've read the feeds and the articles, that Wawas, they are like I don't want to say they're a proponent of crime, but where there's Wawas, you know, excuse me? Not proponent of crime. I said I didn't mean to say a proponent of crime, but there is more crime where there's Wawas. You know, Ben Salem, they didn't want the Wawa up there. I mean, I personally have nothing against Wawa. I go to Wawas. I don't buy gas at Wawa. I buy gas at Sunoco. But I just don't think it's right for the intersection that you're looking at. So thank you for listening to me.
Good.
I'm Marina Gresham. I'm a member of Schuylkill Friends Meeting. And tell me what.
State and spell your.
Spell my name, Marina, M-A-R-I-N-A, Gresham, G-R-E-S-H-A-M. Anything else?
No, that's fine.
Okay, thanks. So I'm representing the meeting tonight. The others weren't available, but we are grateful that we have a draft working with the developer. One thing that I'm concerned about is we do have it sounds like a modest grant that will be put into place to make improvements related to some of the meeting's imagined needs. We don't really know how the intersection changes and the development will affect the meeting. We have no idea. But I guess my concern is when we deal with the real, you know, the things that are real as a result and how they might be mitigated. This is a historic, long-time Quaker meeting, and, you know, based on the principles of silence and peace, and, you know, we're upset about it, but we don't know. No, we don't know, so we don't know how to actually negotiate. And I'm hoping that in the long term that there can be some help with things that are a result of the change. So I guess that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, good evening.
Flip that up a little later. There you go.
Okay, my name is Marilyn Bilson. I live at 215 Meeting House Lane in the Moore Hall development. I do have serious concerns about the traffic right now to get out of Whitehorse Road to make a left-hand turn onto 23 during busy hours. You can wait through several lights. Once a Wawa is built, there will be Phoenixville traffic coming down 2nd Avenue, turning onto Whitehorse Road, which can back up close to Rossiter, all to get their morning coffee. So you're putting additional traffic that's not coming off of 23, that's going to be cutting through the back of Phoenixville down 2nd Avenue. That's going to really impact that intersection, not just going into the Wawa, but also exiting the Wawa. I also have a concern, if you've ever been on Route 23 from King of Prussia heading towards Phoenixville around 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the traffic can back up to, almost back up to the dam there. So now you're adding people who are trying to either stop to, I'm not sure if you can enter the Wawa off of 23 by making a right-hand turn and then trying to get into the Wawa, or if you have to go through the light and then make the right-hand turn into Wawa from 23. But people stuck there, backing that traffic up even further as the light is changing, because you know people will go through a red light, like if they're halfway through, and it's already a problem. I don't know if anybody has looked at that, but it will back up to the dam during the busy hours. Another concern I have, I understand it's going to be a 24-hour Wawa. At night, when trucks are coming in, I imagine they are going to be filling and stocking in the evening. Every time they back up, you're going to be hearing that beep, 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 beep. That's going to add a lot of noise to our neighborhoods. So, I agreed with everything the gentleman from Vincent said as well. Okay.
Thank you.
Hello. Elena Harris. I'm on Meeting House Lane as well in the Moore Hall development. And everything that everybody has said is true with the traffic. And as you know, most of the traffic, when it does back up to the dam, as soon as they get to our development, they make that quick right and fly through our neighborhood to get to 2nd Avenue to get around all the traffic. My concern is not only when the Wawa is built, but while it's under construction and the intersection is under construction, we are going to have immense traffic right through our neighborhood. And again, everybody flies through there. We have kids, pets. It's a very major concern. As you know, Marilyn just stated, they will be coming up through, 2nd Avenue, through our development to get onto 23 to just get around all the traffic during construction and when the Wawa's there. As far as the 24/7 goes and the largest footprint, I don't understand why it needs to be that large of a footprint, bigger than the ones that are in the 2 commercial areas at Atwater and further down when it's in a residential neighborhood. We're not opposed to Wawa, we're not opposed to having a convenience store there, but why it has to be that big of a footprint and 24/7 in a residential neighborhood is, I think, what everybody's concern is. It's not that we don't want a Wawa, it's the 24/7 and the large footprint.
I know this is public comment, but I think it would be useful to say that there was a prior application for Wawa, and the township intended, right across, township imposed a condition of less than 24 hours. I think it was something to tenant night, and the court struck it.
Oh, they did?
Did, yeah.
Okay. I thought it was part of the conditional use. I guess I was wrong. All right, thank you.
Now, you know the rules, you're a party. All right, does anybody have any objection to this party making a public comment? Council?
I do not.
No.
All right, go ahead.
Sorry, I don't know how all this works. Dana Coleman, Vincent Road. Like everybody has said about traffic through our little street, which it's a small street, so sometimes people don't think too much about it. However, to get onto our street coming from eastbound to make a left onto Vincent Road to go to our house, I can't tell you how many near misses for me to turn left onto my street that I've had. People try to squeeze by my car to go past me to continue to the light at Whitehorse. I don't know how long the left turning lane is going to be to get into the Wawa, but that's going to back up even more on 23. So my major concern is people making a left onto Whitehorse from 23. It's going to be a problem. Also, Whitehorse backing up. It's a problem now with nothing really at that corner except for Nexon. It's going to be a disaster, especially during construction. And my main concern, like she said, I'm not against a Wawa, but it's a humongous Wawa in our backyard. I'm going to really miss the dark skies, gonna miss the sounds that you can hear of animals, the foxes, the birds, the frogs. We're gonna have lights, we're gonna have beeping, we're gonna have honking. It's not gonna be quiet. I've lived there for 13 years, and I bought that house because it was a cute little neighborhood, very quiet street. And yes, it's not on my street, but it's in my backyard, and it's not gonna be the nice dark backyard that we have, and it's going to be lights and brightness and sound.
Thank you. All right, that concludes public comment. There's one other point that I need to cover. I was reminded that at the first hearing, I did not identify the Board of Supervisors exhibits. They are as follows. BOS 1 is the hearing notice. BOS 2 is the certificate of posting on June 30th, 2023. BOS 3 is the affidavit of publication of the hearing notice. BOS 4 was notice of mailing to residents within 300 feet. BOS 5 is publication of advertisement by email. BOS 6, conditional use review letter from T&M Associates. BOS 7, PennDOT HOP review letter of May 31st, 2023. And BOS 8 is the zoning hearing board decision dated April 11, 2023. So thank you. That will go on the record. I think we're finished. So with this, the record will be closed. We'll follow the timelines that we have proceeded with. And on behalf of the board, I wish to thank everyone for coming this evening and participating in the process. Good evening.
Thank you.